This is the next phase of the guppy census. The first step of processing guppies is to be done here by Sarah Fitzpatrick, who's just taken a guppy from this tank that held all the fish that were collected together in the same pool, and she's placed it in that container, which has a mild, dilute solution of an anesthetic that will quiet the fish. The main thing is just to make the fish immobile so that they can be handled without injuring them. If they're flipping around, then they'll be subject to injury. And so now the animal is quieting down, and with just a second it will be still. And then what she'll do is pick it up with a spoon and pass it on to the second station. Which is Justa Heinen. And now Justa's looking at it with a microscope so that she can read the marks that define the fish as an individual.
Five white, 8K.
Okay, so there are 8 different positions and 9 or 10 different colors that we're using now, and each fish gets 2 different marks. And so that gives us that combinatorics, means that we can identify thousands of individuals. And now what she's done is put the guppy on a scale. It's actually, there's a container of water on that scale that was tared, and so now she's added the guppy to the water.
It weighs 0.201.
Okay, and here's Stephanie George, who's keeping track of all the data. She recorded the individual, and we also know where the individual was found, and now we have the individual's weight, so it's part of a series of observations. And now the fish has been passed on to Andrew Furness, who will then photograph it. And for some of the photographs, if we're going to do analyses of body shape, what he has to do is to use a fine paintbrush so that he can spread out the fins of the fish. We need to see where the fins are, where they insert on the body, because they represent important landmarks for identifying the shape of the fish. And we'll talk about shape analyses in a different set of video clips. And the fish is photographed with a scale and a color standard. And one of the important features of the color standard is it makes it possible for us to analyze the color patterns of the males, but then we're also able to analyze the body shape of the fish. And what you just saw him take off was a label that identified who the fish was, so that when we look at the photograph, we'll know who he is. And then the fish is placed into a solution to recover. And one of the things that we do is to, keep track of them and make sure they're recovering well. What'll happen is after just a few seconds, we'll see them their gills starting to move again. And once clean water passes over the surface of the gills, then the effects of the anesthetic will quickly fade and the fish will begin to swim around normally and happily. And here are all the fish that were collected together in the same pool. So what we have as a consequence of this is information on who was found where. We know all the fish that were found. We know how big they are, and we have photographs of them. And if you put this together in a time series, it means that we'll know about the population, the fate of each fish and the growth of the population and the growth of the individual fish. But then we also, if there are new marked fish, there are fish that are unmarked, they're new recruits in the population, we'll remove 2 scales, and from those scales we'll get DNA. From the DNA we'll get a genetic fingerprint of them, and we'll be able to identify who their parents were, and we'll be able to incorporate the pedigree data in the other analyses that we'll do as part of the study.